A few days ago, one of my friends asked me, what are you going to do when you run out of engines? Run out of engines? What, are people going to start checking their oil and changing it on time? They're going to start paying attention to their gauge cluster and warning lights and smells and sounds? Are manufacturers going to make cars good again? No, that's not going to happen. So there will always be a blown up engine to tear down. Every Saturday night we'll have something to tear down, something blown up. Hopefully we don't ever tear down a good engine, but you never know. You never know. But one thing we do know is that this engine is pooched. This is a viewer-supplied 3.5-liter Ecoboost out of a 2012 F-150. Now, this comes from Greg Merrill in Holland, Michigan. Thank you for the email. Thank you for supplying this week's teardown. You all owe him a huge thank you. This was from a truck that he bought at the auction. The auction is a wonderful place. It's also terrifying. There's a lot of good deals there, and there's a lot of bad deals here. And it sounds like this one had been maybe one of the bad deals. The first generation of 3.5-liter Ecoboost put out 365 horsepower and 420 foot-pounds of torque. I've driven these trucks. They drive really nice. It's no wonder they sold so many of them. Although I've heard of mixed review on these. A lot of people don't like these engines. They say they're unreliable. My neighbor's had one for probably 9 or 10 years and has had zero trouble with it. I think I helped them put an oxygen sensor on it once. So I think it's really how they're taken care of. Like anything else, if you take care of it, if you maintain it really well, you may not have problems. If you neglect it and you abuse it, you're going to find some problems. Now this one has some pretty big problems. This engine has over 200,000 miles on it. So finding a bad 200,000 mile engine isn't really that difficult, but usually they're not quite this bad. So this is the good side. And the reason I say that is because it's only got one hole in it. Nope, I lied. There's 2 holes in it. And this is what I would consider the bad side. Now, to be fair, they're both really bad. Not good at all. If you really needed this much crankcase ventilation, there's probably cheaper ways to get it. So the story goes something like he bought this truck from the auction and it was making a ticking sound. So he thought that it needed phasers. So he did phasers, timing chain. So we're going to find a lot of new parts in here. He put it back together and it was still making some not so great noises. And then it made a bunch of really loud noises, and apparently it still runs in its current condition, which I believe it. I've seen crazier things, but we're going to find some malice in the combustion palace today. The very first thing I'd like to do is see how it feels when you turn it over. Still got plugs in it. It doesn't feel great. I don't feel anything loose on the crank. Something had to make those holes. Now this box, which is an oil filter box, was included with this engine, but there is not an oil filter in here. In fact, in case you need an extra bolt boss, they're right here. Next, we'll pull the plugs. Well, I have no doubts as to what cylinder may have a problem. These all look pretty okay. They have painted tips, which tells me that... What? This is supposed to have 200,000 miles on them. Maybe they're just dealer bought? How does that work, guys? I don't do enough of these engines. The rest of these look okay, except for this one. This one seems to have dealt with a catastrophe. That's definitely one of the worst plugs we've seen in a long time. The next thing we're going to do is remove the upper intake plenum. Vacuum lines off. Let's see here. That was pretty easy. Well, these are pretty grungy looking. That side doesn't look too bad. I mean, it doesn't look good, but I don't see anything too terrible. This is the right bank. One looks okay. One looks all right. Wait, what am I looking at? Oh, hey! That's part of the valve guide. That's not supposed to be there. Since we're in the vicinity, I'm going to remove thermostat housing, the water manifold, coolant pipe, and that crossover. Well, that was easy. And while we're here, we'll get the fuel lines off. Next, we'll get the high pressure fuel pump off. There appears to be some temporary fixes. Some gray, at least they used the right color. There's no oil in it. Now we'll peel this valve cover off. Well, it's looser-ish. We'll get it off. Just needed a little help from Blue. So I don't think those are new cam phasers. In fact, there's way too much varnish on them and it matches the rest of the inside of this engine. I don't think these were replaced. I don't know if my shipping manager got the wrong story or was confused with another engine that may be here or not. Either way, this all looks on par with a 200,000 mile engine that just had average maintenance. So I don't see anything terribly concerning. Well, okay. There's a little bit of scarring on the camshafts. That is concerning. Very concerning, actually. Those cam lobes are not happy. Sorry, my camera has ADHD. It just can't focus here. Come on, do it. I don't know how well that shows on the screen or on your TV, but not good. I don't love to see that. Now for the right bank. And these are not missing, they're broken off. That happened in shipping. I'm sure it wasn't like that when it was shipped to us. Whoa! That one's bent. Everything checks out on this side. The lobes on this side of the engine look a little bit better from the ones that I can see anyway. Still some damage. I wonder what went through here. Before we start unbolting turbochargers, we're going to remove these coolant fittings from the cylinder head.
And it's gone.
Okay, we'll get Blue for that. There, now these can rotate pretty easily. There we are. I'm sure that's super easy in the truck. Next, the oil return. The oil feed. Wait a minute, how does this work? Is there another one of them crazy clips on here? I got an idea. Boy, this looks like it would be fairly impossible in the truck. Okay. I think I can unbolt the turbocharger now. Okay, so what do you guys think the over-under is on breaking these bolts off? Think I'll get all three out? I could get them hot. No. I didn't have anything spicy enough. Wow. This is how you gingerly do that. Ah, we're so close. That was unexpected. But hey, it came out. That's what matters, right? And there's one turbo. I don't think I need to take this out, but we're going to try anyway. I think that was just out of habit right there. Oh, the bolt went in the hole. Okay, we're going to get these out too. We're doing pretty good so far. Well, that is all unexpected. I think I still have one. No, maybe not. I don't have any lines to take off. And she's off. Let's take a look at these whirlybirds here. There's no shaft play. The impeller looks pretty clean. Pretty dirty on the outside, but that's not really a good indicator of too much. But look at the amount of oil inside that turbo. This came off of this is the right bank, and then the left bank. They both spin pretty good. This has just a smidge, barely noticeable shaft play. Wastegates are all tight. And that one too, pretty wet looking inside the exhaust housing. I think these would be good builder cores. I don't really know if they have much value. I think they'd work just fine, but there's no telling how the seals are in them. Here is a much better look at the inspection port that has been installed on the right side of this block. Oh hey, that wasn't supposed to happen. That's the drain for the turbo. See if we can just get... Nope, that's just going to hang out there. So that's a pretty good size inspection port. Next, we will remove the water pump. I think I got them all. I don't think I need to get a pan. No, see, it's fine. So the water pump looks pretty good. It doesn't feel very good, though. It's kind of notchy. The coolant looks bad. What kind of rust sludge is this? Why did I touch it? I don't see it leaking from the weep hole there. A little bit of crusties right there, but it's really not too bad. Now the crank pulley. Well, that wasn't tight. All right, now we just have a few 10 millimeters to hold the timing cover on. I think I got all the 10 millimeter bolts out, and I think there's just a few others. Now I just got to give this a little bit of a pry, and it should come off. Should being the operative word. They give you places to pry. Timing cover's off. It seems a little early for piston nuggets. It's more of a breakfast time. And we're just gonna forget we saw that. I see one shiny bolt in the timing area, so I think somebody's been in here. I'll have to pull all this apart to see if I find any date stamps on any of these parts. I don't see anything off the top of my head. It's because I can't see the top of my head. The inside of the timing cover, a little bit of engine gravel. Not good. All right, Ford guys, what do you think? Have some of these parts been replaced? This one looks pretty clean. The rest of these don't look clean. They look like they've been on this engine for a while. But then we've got one new bolt here. And then we've got one different bolt here. The rest of these look like they've been in here for a minute. And I think someone has definitely been in here because there's some whiz wheel marks in here. Now we're going to start shedding some timing system parts. We're going to start with the tensioner. I'm just going to look the other way. It'll be safer. Oh, there's nothing to fear. See, it's fine. Tensioner looks good. Guide looks good. Definitely not new. It's definitely got some wear on it, but it's still good. Now, ooh, stuff's happening. Oh, that comes off. Okay. So this, I can partially get this out. It looks like there's certain spots that I can probably pull this off, but we're just going to start removing some more parts, make it a little bit easier. So that looks good. Yep, I don't think that's new. Oh, for sure this thing's been in there for a while. Let's see, there is a date thing in here, and I can't read it. It is in English, but I still can't read it. Ah, it's original. Pretty good for original. And then I've got this odd 10 millimeter here. Yeah, we're just going to kind of get this in a bind and then walk away. We'll get this off next. So that does not appear to be an original Ford bolt. The threaded hole looks like it's in good shape. Yeah, these are original. Okay, I think the next thing we're going to do is get these cam gears or phasers out of the way so I can pull this magnificent, absolutely magnificent chain out of this engine. I'm just going to pull them all. It'll be fine. See, it's fine. There we are. That side came off pretty easily. Ooh, that had some force. And the chain hit the ground. Now this is a chain. Now it's time to crack the cam caps loose. Well, it's not good, guys. Not good at all. The journals aren't too bad towards this side of the engine. They are kind of scarred up. The lifters don't look good either. And look at all of the lapping compound. I mean, oil deposits. It's filled with metal. It's gray. I don't know if that shows well on screen, but that is the finest of forbidden glitter. And then these end journals are probably the worst. But the cams, front of the cams, some minor damage, but by far the lobes are the most damage we've seen in a long time. It just looks dry. And they're both like that. The journals aren't too bad. The lobes are really beat up. Now we have a few things to do before we can crack head bolts loose. We need to remove these sensors so that we have full access to the head bolts. I don't think this one needs to come out, but we're taking it out anyway. And then there's one external head bolt here. Let's see, can I get these out without blue? Oh yeah. Easy peasy. Now, we can get these head bolts out. All right, now it's time to rip its head off. There's some ungood things that I can see with my eyes. Not that we expected it to be in great shape, but the head gasket's good. Pistons, not so good. So if you look, there's definitely some damage at the edge of the crown on this piston. Top looks good, but the bottom had some debris in it. And then the middle cylinder is even worse. And the rear Has it on both sides, and it's even worse. It's the worst of the three. So now it's time to do our test for science. Okay, let's try this. Hey, that's all really good. Cylinder head definitely has some damage in the combustion chamber. It's kind of a bummer. Not saying that you couldn't use these or fix them, but they're certainly not ready to go back on an engine. All right, now we can crack these loose on the other side. Very similar story on this side of the engine. Journals have minor to moderate wear. The lifters, they look like they've been beat up pretty badly. Not as much silver paste on this side. And the cam caps, again, very similar amount of wear from the other bank. The cams, I think they're in about the same condition. Now that I can see multiple sides of them, there's a lot of damage to the lobes. The journals aren't too bad. The lobes are not too good. Now I think it's worth mentioning that all of the cams are cast except for the one that drives the fuel pump. That looks like a pressed together cam. The rest of these are all cast. This bank's just like the other. We'll get these sensors out of the way. And one bolt up here. Now we can crack these head bolts loose. Now, let's rip this head off. Oh, okay. So now we're going to remove the head gasket. And if you can't already tell, we have problems. Now, we knew we were going to see some problems, but that looks fine. Yep, Oh. First, the test. So this bank starts off strong, continues on pretty strong, and falls on its face, or something like that. That bore is absolutely annihilated. There's so much metal, gravel, dings, dents, gouges. I got to know what the wrist pin looks like. Look how deep some of that is. It's impressive. And the cylinder head is very clear which cylinder let go. It looks like the valves are hammer forged. You think we should pull those out to get a better look at them? I feel like that would be a good thing to do. Because I feel like there's some damage that we're not seeing here. Something else I thought I'd mention is what the size of the buckets look like. They usually don't look like this. This is bad. That's a lot of damage for what this is. We don't usually see that on these engines. Now, I don't believe there to be too much oil in this thing, but I also need to drain it. I'm sure this won't have too much in it. It's kind of chunky. We'll let this drain for a minute, and we'll get the oil filter off next. I changed my mind. We're going to pull this idler. This is not a water pump, but this is where the water pump goes on the front-wheel drive based engines. See, now this is in pretty good shape. I don't really see anything too bad, but why does it have like a copper look to the inside of this? I've never seen that before. Yeah, this isn't bad.
But Eric, it's not a water pump.
I don't care. It looks like one. See how hard this filter is to get off. Okay. That seems excessive. Let's try it one more time. Yep. This will get it off, right? Yeah. It's got some clean, fresh oil in there. We'll cut this open towards the end of this teardown. Now, it may be hard to tell, but you can see where this engine has drained its sparkly oil. It's anti-seize infused versus the rest of what's in this pan. You know it's bad when I can tell the oil from this engine is dirty in the dirty oil pan. Now we can get this cooler off. Next, we'll remove this oil housing. It allows us access to the main cap bolts. Now, it is time to pull the oil pan. And I'm going to pull it in this position because I don't want to fish all these loose parts out of the engine. Okay, moment of truth. What are we going to have in this gift basket? Oh boy. Now I'm going to turn this over for the great reveal. Or the great mess. Maybe both. Ah, yes. Carnage. Eve. Well, there certainly is a lot to unpack here. We've got our large piston nugget with a side of windage tray, another piston nugget, and of course, our ready to install wrist pin. There's the little end of a rod, and it is pretty beat up. There's more windage tray. And that's the bolt that fell into the pan while I was taking it apart. That did not fall in there prior to the explosion, I promise. That's Rod. Poor Uncle Rodney. Ring. Ring. Ring.
Pick up the phone.
There is a lot. I'm just going to pour this out. I think that's going to be the best way to show you guys how much is actually in here. I'm just going to rake it out. Hey, look. That circlip's in good shape. I will say this did a pretty good job at containing the blast, but it did have a windage tray to slow it down. We got more chunks up here. Yeah, that's not good. You don't want to find this stuff in your engine, at least not in this kind of arrangement. Let's set this over here. Now that we've cleaned that, that's a lot of gravel. So there is one thing missing here. What don't you see that we normally find when we tear down an engine that's blown up this bad? Where's the big end? Well, we need to go look at, well, that's another piece of rod. We need to go look at the inside of the short block. Inside of the pan, all that's left is the finely powdered stuff, a few larger chunks, but nothing like what we just scooped out of here. I don't see any impact marks, so that's good too. Well, mystery solved. There's the big end of the rod, and it is still nicely mounted to the crank. It spins nice and easy. It's an interesting failure. Windage tray has a hole in it. There's some junk in the pickup, but I think that was from it running after the explosion. The rest of this has quite a lot of oil varnish. I don't think this engine was that well taken care of. Next, we'll remove the pickup tube. Oh, I didn't really need to do that. Sure, we'll just pull that with part of the windage tray. Next, we'll remove the forbidden glitter pump. I mean the oil pump. All right, first, we'll shake out whatever in the pickup tube. Not too much. There was room for more. There is a piece of RTV, but that's not enough to block it. The rest of this just matches. Here, we'll just... There. Now you never tell. Now it's time to pull the oil pump apart. Oof. It's quite a meaty pump. Feels really gritty. There's a lot of metal in here. The fine stuff, though. I mean, it's not fine. Well, not too much damage to the housing or this one, just a little bit. But the finish is pretty messed up on this. Messed up is a technical term for not good. It's not the worst we've seen, but it definitely ingested some metal. Now it is time to remove the rest of the windage tray. That's cool. I think at this point I'm going to crack all the rod caps loose. We'll get the rod caps off. I'll have to turn the crank over, which will drive them to the top of their bores, and we'll get the crank out before we pull the rods and pistons. Is this going to fight me here? It might. In order to get the rear main seal plate, I'm going to loosen these bolts. Give a little bit of space to work with. I think that'll come out with it. We're going to find out. Now it's time for the main caps. Oh no. All right, now, hopefully this crank just pops right on up, right? Stuff's falling, it's fine. Well, I wasn't going to show this until the rods and pistons were out, which I still will, but I just wanted to show you this. This type of violence is just uncalled for. It's so bad. All from one rod? It's wild. All right, now let's see how hard it is to get these out of their bores. Apparently not at all. I spoke too soon. We have one more thing to do before I show you everything. Nope, we're going to have to tap it on. Whoa there. So let's take a look at these rod bearings. That's good. A little bit of wear, but pretty good. A little bit more wear. Not bad, though. Not too bad. Nothing jumping out at me. A little bit of wear there. A little bit more there. But again, the rod bearings, they look pretty good for 200,000 miles. The rods and pistons, though, they all have a little bit of damage. That one's actually not too bad. Skirt wear is not terrible. The rings are freed up. This one's got some damage, and that second ring is pretty frozen. It's not as bad as the last 3.5 Ecoboost we tore down. That one looks good. This one's got more damage. And yeah, again, that number 2 compression ring. You can see how that doesn't want to come all the way out of there. You can probably get it out of there and get it moving pretty well. There's some pretty good divots on the top of the piston. This one, it exploded. It's the exploded view. But again, the bearings look good. I don't think this was an oil-related failure whatsoever. I don't see any signs of that. That's just so much gravel. I think there's some block chunks in there and probably some parts off of this piston, because this one took a beating, an absolute beating. And still somehow it stayed in relatively one piece. There's pretty deep chunks there. There's chunks of metal in the oil ring. Skirts destroyed. I mean, its neighbor just killed itself. So, of course, there's going to be a little bit of collateral damage. The main bearings, not too bad. A little bit of wear on those shells there. But I think most of the damage that you see here was done with it running after it blew up. So I see a lot of comments in these videos as to how people can buy these parts, because everything that comes off of these engines as I tear them down, unless I specify that I'm keeping it for some reason, it's available for purchase. Now, I understand that a lot of it is not usable, most of it display pieces only, but if you'd like to buy any of this, I'll leave the email in the video description, and I'll leave our website in there as well. Let's take a look at that block. Looks like I got shot with a shotgun of piston material. There's so many chunks stuck to the walls. But the rest of these look really nice. Like the rest of this, the bores look pretty good. Okay, there's a little bit of glazing there. It's not bad. I don't see any signs that this thing ran lean. Doesn't look bad. The crankshaft, I mean, I don't know that I would use it. But the journals are pretty decent. A little bit of wear there. But, I mean, this took some hits. This must have sounded amazing. I mean, it is beat up bad. I don't know that I would reuse this crank after the catastrophe this went through. Plus, Ford cranks are generally pretty inexpensive. Now the oil filter, and look at that pocket of metally sludge there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this out because of the damage done to the casing, but we are going to try, and we're going to use the best tool for the job, and it's probably going to make a big mess over everything. It's fine, guys. I have pig mat here. Okay, I'm going to pour this out and return. Problem is, in shipping, these things get so beat up. Filters always take a hit. I am still no better off. And we're out. I don't even know if I need to, because there's so much metal packed in here. But it's not, there's a few larger chunks. It's very fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it is fine. So again, not huge chunks of metal in here. This is just the really small pieces, lots of it. And the oil has a metallic sheen to it. No, we're not done. I gotta pull the valves out of the head to see how bad they are. So no broken springs. That's good. Oh. Oh, okay. How do these look? Yeah, that's not supposed to be like that. This one won't come out. Oh, yes, it will. I have a hammer. Just needed a little persuasion. Wow, this is pretty impressive. Obviously, it just let go at idle. It was just in the drive-through. Or, you know, wide open throttle getting on the highway. One of those two scenarios is probably true. But the valve seats, no, they're kind of damaged. This head, it probably could be salvaged. It is certainly not worth it. These heads are not that hard to find. The exhaust valves are just amazing. But what's crazy are the intake valves, because it broke part of the stem off, or part of the valve guide rather. Oh, I can barely slide that down the stem of the valve. Nope, that one's permanent fixture. Yeah, I can't get this. I guess these are just bent enough at the right location where that won't slide past. I've never seen those break from an engine coming apart on this channel. I mean, the valves are obviously very bent. That broke the guides off in the head. Let's get a light on that. There you can see the damage a little better. Snapped them right off. It's a lot of force to do that. Sometimes it's pretty easy to tell what happens to these engines. In this case, it's not as apparent. This engine had a lot of forbidden glitter, a lot of metal in the oil, but there is a but here. I think that happened after this engine blew up because the guy I got the engine from, Greg, said it still ran. Obviously, it didn't run right, but it still ran, which I think had time to mince up all the chunks of metal, suck it through the pickup and the oil pump. But I don't think it was an oil starvation issue because the bearings didn't look that bad. The cam journals weren't that bad. The worst part of the cams were the lobes and then the lifters. I think that is probably centered around what happens to this engine. I don't think it was a hydrolock situation. We didn't see any rust on the cylinder walls. I don't know how you could over-rev one of these. Maybe it was tuned. Maybe it blew a piston apart. That's a possibility. But the big end of the rod was still firmly bolted to the crank. The bearing looked good. All the journals on the crank looked good. This wasn't your typical oil starvation case. And if it had jumped time or had some timing related issue, we would have seen marks on all the pistons, not just debris and one deleted. This thing was blown up bad. You should never, ever run an engine after it's blown up. I have no idea who would ever do that.
Fast something's happening. Something's happening. Oh no! Oh, it's quiet again. It fixed itself. Uh-oh. There's some parts in the parking lot that weren't there earlier.
But the good news here is this engine has a lot of very good reusable parts. No, it doesn't. It's got an oil pan. I can sell the oil pan off of it and the timing cover. That's it. That's all that's left. The rest of this is pretty much desk ornament. So if you'd like a rod and piston for your desk or as a Christmas gift or anything else out of this engine for whatever reason, everything I tear down is usually for sale. I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to Importapart.com and peruse our inventory. I've been uploading our parts cars just about every single week, including another Miata. I think we have like 22 of them here. So if you need Miata parts, I probably have you covered. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. You all owe Greg a huge thank you for supplying this engine because he took a pretty big financial hit trying to buy a used engine, I'm sure. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.